Hello, David. How you doing today?
I'm very good. How are you, Eddie?
I'm doing great as well, David. Today, I want to discuss with you your managed sales teams service so that users of the CloudTest Marketplace looking at your listing can decide whether this listing is appropriate for them or not. In order to provide the information that should let them identify this, I'm going to ask you three questions. So let's go ahead and get started with the first one, which is who is the best fit for this specific service offer?
Great. Thanks, Eddie. So I think that the organizations that are the best fit for this are organizations with a high value solution that they're taking to market. They're in the technology or technology services sectors, and they sit really at two different ends of a spectrum. So they all have high value solutions, but we work very well with the very largest organizations, the multi-billion dollar established kind of market listed organizations where they're very often trying to expand their offerings, cross sell and upsell more effectively into some of their existing accounts. And at the other end of that spectrum, the high growth scale ups where they've established product market fit, but there's a degree of use case customization and accelerated growth that they're looking to drive across that.
Awesome. So large organizations or in high growth, definitely transactions, not looking for volume, low ticket, but rather um, high ticket that require a lot of expertise, penetrating those accounts, communicating with the ideal target. Excellent. Is there a minimum recommended ticket size for this type of solution? 100K, 150? Have you seen something like that?
Great question. So I think it depends on whether you're measuring total contract value or annual recurring revenue or monthly recurring revenue. There are different ways that different organizations would structure that. I would say typically on the ARR side, 25K would be about the minimum kind of threshold, and for TCV, probably 150K. And then there is also an upper threshold. So once you're into kind of hundreds of $1 million kind of deals, or 100 million pounds, euros, whatever currency you want to use, you're then into a very, very different scenario. They go from being political within the organization to being political on the governmental scale, and requiring lots and lots of stakeholders, after which we're probably less of a good fit for those. We find them every so often, but less of a good fit in that scenario.
That makes a lot of sense. So 2,500K on the lower spectrum, all the way to a couple hundred millions, maybe 50, 20. It's still within the range. 100 plus, that's when they may need to look for a different solution. I understand what you mean in political and the macro scale. So that takes me then to the second question, which is what are the components of this service software? If you can walk me through the process, platforms, and people involved in the delivery, please.
Sure. So at the outset, there's an enablement side of things for our team to make sure that we've understood our customers' value propositions, where they align, and where they're going to play best. But a lot of that is guided, or virtually all of it is guided. We know what we need to know and how we help get that information, those assets, and the alignment structured in the right way. Pulling that together is a team of people who are working on, if you like, a fractional basis that have done this time and time again for lots of our customers. So they're providing that capability for all of our different clients at that stage of the process. And it's really important to us that our sales development teams are involved directly in those activities as well. Depending on whether it's the service that we're talking about here, or sometimes we complement this service with things like account-based marketing and other activities where we also then have creatives and content writers and other people coming into part of that setup process. The core offering itself then composes all of the profiling, all of the platforms and tools that you might need to do that. So we create a dedicated instance in salesforce.com that we're putting all of the client's data into, and to make sure that from a regulatory standpoint, we're following all the procedures we need to there. And then we have access to all the leading platforms. So SalesLoft Outreach from a sales engagement platform standpoint, and doing the outreach. We also use things like ZoomInfo, Cognism, other tools of that kind to enrich the target audiences that we're going after. As I said in the answer to the previous question, these are complicated accounts. There's usually multiple stakeholders that have to be engaged, and you're needing to do that in a kind of omni-channel approach. So this setup and kind of initial component is all about bringing those pieces together and getting really strong alignment all the way through that revenue engine, making sure that marketing team, the sales development team, and the sales organization are really, really well aligned. We're then making sure that on an ongoing basis, obviously we're finding opportunities, we're uncovering requirements, we're also uncovering a lot of intelligence about why accounts either are or are not a good fit. It's super crucial that we keep that communication going back and forth with our customers, that they understand what's working, what's not working, and how we're adapting and evolving that, and we're collectively learning those lessons throughout. And so it is a kind of truly integrated revenue engine that we're trying to orchestrate across that whole piece.
Perfect. I like the way you mentioned omni-channel revenue engine. So you have the capabilities to go through phone, email, and LinkedIn. You mentioned some of the tools that you set up for your clients as a dedicated Salesforce instance, SalesLove Outreach, ZoomInfo to source leads, Cognism to enhance the intelligence you have on those leads, and maybe some angles that can help you attack that account. As you said before, you have the capabilities of deploying account-based marketing approaches in which your clients would give you the brands that they want to close, and you do the whole strategy to get in contact with different people at that company and convert them. There is one thing I wanted to confirm. You mentioned there are different team members with different roles that may provide value to the account on a fractional basis. So I wanted to confirm which of the roles would be maybe fractional, and what could be the roles that are dedicated. Is there a BDR, maybe a manager that is dedicated to the account, while the other ones just complement based on the needs, like creating a playbook, etc.?
Sure, no, great question. So at its core, the sales development manager, as we call them, is the dedicated components, and there might be multiple of those depending on the scale of the program that we're running, and they are then supported in large part by fractional support. So again, dependent on scale, if we're running a very large program, there might be a number of dedicated program managers that are providing the first line management and ensuring the alignment and communication across all of that. But in smaller programs, those individuals may well be working on other programs as well. There would never be a situation in Clarify's world where we would have fractional sales development agents. For the scale and complexity of the work that we're doing, it's just not possible to break that down. Some of the other fractional components are things like our talent team, so learning and development, and the enablement side of things, the marketing team members, depending on even when we're not doing an ABM program or other kind of marketing component, we have to ensure that the assets that we're getting align into an overall story, and that we're able to bring that to life for the prospects in the right way. And you'd expect, of course, a degree of overarching kind of strategy and leadership that would come into play, both on the marketing side and the sales development side as well.
Fantastic. Now,
but it's possible.
Excellent. Now, there is one thing I want to double click here. The location of your campaigns and the location of your staff. Is there a preferred region where you want to work with your clients, and therefore where you have your team or your staff located?
So we have our staff located in two principal locations. So one in Europe, which is based in our UK office principally, although we have some remote workers as well, and another in Tampa in Florida. And so those teams, if it's a global program, they're coordinating to ensure global coverage across that. But really important to us, certainly when we're dealing with any particular region, is that it's not just the language that needs to be tailored, it's the culture that you have to fit into as well. So, for example, if we're working into the German, the DACH region, it wouldn't just be somebody who spoke German, it would be somebody who is German, has grown up in that culture.
I got the point that while you have two main hubs, both in UK and the US in Tampa, Florida, you will gather or you will assign to the account people that have not only the language, but also the local expertise, so they can tailor the conversation, understand the nuances in the culture, and really get through and deliver the message to the ideal buyers or prospects that you're going to be tackling through the process, through the service, which is fantastic. And you had mentioned earlier that you guide your clients through the process. So walk me through what that process is. Basically, what can someone that buys this service expect in the first 120 days? What type of sessions, milestones, deliverables? When do you typically go live? Help us unpack that, please.
Sure. So there's a lot of it depends in that answer, because every client situation is different, and we have to tailor to fit that. But typically there is, if you like, before that 120 days would be considered to start, there's a lot of work in our own sales process to make sure that there's a really strong alignment between what we're going to be able to do and what the client is looking to do. And in fact, one of the best pieces of feedback that we get on a regular basis is that people chose us because we brought a level of professionalism to the process that they want to see in the execution beyond it. Part of that is to define a timeline, a set of milestones. As you say, we have what we call month zero, which is a kind of fast start period where we're getting onboarded, we're understanding and getting alignment, building profiles of some of the initial tranche of accounts and getting those activities up and running. And all of that is tying back into something that was defined in the proposal itself, which is what we call a pipeline and forecast model that takes a series of assumptions that either the client is making or we're making based upon our experience of a similar level of maturity, similar complexity, types of audience, a whole range of factors that go into determining what we think we're going to be able to deliver and what that looks like. And so then from the start of month one, if you like, of the beginning of the outreach activities into those customers or their prospects, we're starting to track against that pipeline and forecast model, ensuring that we understand either why we're ahead or behind track and the adjustments that need to be made along the way. Anybody who's ever worked in any kind of sales and marketing world knows that it's very rare that you're absolutely on track. You're typically off in one direction or the other. It's a question of trying to optimize for that all the time. So that's a big part of the way that we're working all the way through. And so there are then the milestones beyond that are weekly check-in calls, certainly for the first 8 or 9 weeks. That's a must. They can continue. We're very happy to continue. In fact, they work really well for us. But in certain client situations, it makes sense to turn down some of the frequency of communication. There's an absolutely mandatory monthly business review that every 3 months becomes a quarterly business review to make sure that there's a strong alignment, not only at an operational level in what we're doing, but with the strategy and direction of our customers, which changes, typically on at least a quarterly cycle in terms of potentially small adjustments in the audiences they want to go after, the accounts they're focusing on, the messages that we need to be taking, the solutions that we're taking forward from there. And I guess that's a point I should have made earlier, which is a lot of the difference in the way that we go about doing things is that it's focused on identifying problems and challenges that the target organizations face. Our customers have solutions that are of the scale and complexity that there are relatively few people in market at any given time. There are very often for our customers, there isn't a neat budget line that they're trying to go and sell against. They're having to create an impetus, create a way of getting this program or project off the ground. And so a lot of the emphasis that we're taking both through the kind of fast start phases through month zero and the first few weeks of a program is testing and validating some of the assumptions that we had around that and making sure that the communication that we're taking to those prospects is uncovering challenges and problems that they might not even recognize as a problem. They might have just been unaware that there was a better way of doing this and helping transition that towards a buying cycle that our customers can get engaged in.
Makes sense. Now, tying this back with the ticket size, it seems like these are not going to be short sales cycles. These are going to be long relationships that have to be nurtured. As you said, in the high ticket space, you may not always have a buyer that's prime and ready to buy the solutions. Sometimes they're tied on a contract and you just have to nurture that lead, stay top of mind. So when they're ready to make a switch or release from that contract, you guys are ready. If they call someone, it's you first, or ideally, when that date happens and you've been calling them a week before to prep everything up. And that's where the value is. This is definitely not a, as we said before, a high transaction type of service. It's not a cheap service. This is a premium service for those that are selling premium solutions and require, of course, a lot of engineering and a lot of attention to detail in the structure. David, this has been very clear. Tell me, is there any other detail that you would like to share with the audience in terms of who's a good fit, who's not a good fit? Why should they listen to this service in the marketplace versus another one that you may have?
So I think probably the only thing that I haven't talked about in enough detail is the kind of multi-threaded nature of what we're doing. Because of the size and complexity of these solutions, our team are talking to multiple prospects or multiple individuals within that prospect account. And so exactly to your point, Eddie, it's not a question of just waiting for them to decide that they need to do this. We're trying to activate and energize the prospect to recognize that they have a problem. It's a sizable one. It needs to be treated as a priority. It needs to move up their priority stack, and our client is the right organization to work with. And so we're very often trying to initiate a buying cycle or initiate a selling cycle rather than wait for the timing to be right. So I think that's quite an important component. And then again, we've probably spoken about the right kinds of organizations for us. If I briefly speak to the ones that would be less right for us, if it's a kind of high velocity, low value, more transactional capability, then it's not that we can't work with organizations that have those motions. We absolutely do. A number of our customers have really successful motions of that kind. It's that this is the right answer for the higher value, lower volume, kind of slower velocity deals that they might also be trying to get to. And for some of our customers, we kind of cross that bridge. So they might land with a motion that is quite low value and quite transactional in nature. And it's about how do you convert these high potential but underpenetrated accounts into a very valuable, very sizable account for them as an organization. So I think those are probably the most important pieces for me to get across.
Okay, that makes sense. Maybe there's a solution that's I don't know, $1,000 per user. That's not really a high ticket, but maybe you are getting them clients where they need 100 users, 200 users, and that it becomes an aggregated value, of course, a way larger ticket. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much, David, for providing more details about your managed sales development teams so that users of the CloudTools Marketplace can identify if this is the right solution for them or not, and invite Clarify B2B to an interview so they can learn more about your services and hopefully get a relationship going. David, this has been very helpful. I guess I will catch you on the next one. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Bye bye, David.